Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Hello, Amy Fitzgibbon here, news reporter with the Irish Farmers Journal. Welcome to this week's podcast. This week, Teagasc published its Review and Outlook report for 2017. The agricultural training body predicts that dairy margins will improve next year, but it tempered this prediction with a warning for dairy farmers not to be too optimistic. Our news correspondent, Odile Evans, found out more with Teagasc researcher Trevor Donnellan.
As people probably are aware, dairy markets are recovering at present and have been recovering for the last few months. The outlook going into 2017 in terms of dairy product prices and milk prices is quite positive. But I was urging some caution in that, because as market conditions improve and as farm prices for milk increase, we're probably going to see some production recovery happening in various parts of the world as well. So that makes me a little bit concerned about what the second half of 2017 might have in store in terms of dairy product and milk prices. So we might actually see a situation where dairy product and milk prices in the first half of next year are higher than in the second half of next year, because we might see in the second half of next year supply growing at the global level at a bit stronger rate than it will in the first half of 2017.
And would you be worried then about S&P coming out of intervention and those stocks that are there?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a significant level of stock there. There's 350,000 tonnes of skim milk powder alone in public intervention, and there's more in private storage. That will have to come out onto the market at some point. Some of it will actually come out quite shortly, a small volume relative to the total. But decisions will have to be made at various stages as to what the best time to release that product to the market will actually be. But it will put a limit on the price that can be obtained for skim milk powder that's sold that isn't in stock, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And then just looking, broadly across all the sectors, we're looking at, a decrease in mainly farm inputs. Maybe you could talk me through that and what's bringing those down.
Well, this year what we saw was a fall in fuel prices and a fall in fertiliser prices. Largely the fall in fuel prices is coming from the fact that oil prices this year were lower than they were in 2015. But as we move into 2017, oil prices should begin to increase again, and we would imagine that fuel prices will increase as a result of that positive, probably of the order of about a 10% increase in fuel prices next year. Fertiliser prices, especially in the second half of this year, started to come down. So that means we're starting into 2017 probably with fertiliser prices a good bit below where they were in the same period 12 months ago. So for the first half of next year, farmers should expect to be paying lower prices for fertiliser than they were in the first half of this year, which is the period of the year when most of the buying activity takes place. But fertiliser prices over the year as a whole next year will probably start to move upwards, but in the key periods when people are buying, they probably should be lower than they were this year.
Yeah. And I suppose one of the biggest impacts, going forward for Ireland is going to be Brexit, but also, other global events, say for example France talking about, the elections and all the rest of it, maybe leaving the EU. What sort of an impact are we looking at there? Because this time last year we hadn't got Brexit, to worry about in the forecast. So what other factors can we?
Yeah, I mean, you could give yourself a lot of sleepless nights thinking about these issues. Definitely, the Brexit issue was a surprise, as was the election outcome in the United States. There's an impending referendum in Italy. There's a concern about Italy's capacity to manage its national debt. There are elections coming up in Germany, France and the Netherlands. What these will actually mean will depend on what the outcome of those elections are. I mean, the reason why people are concerned about them is if you end up with a different political perspective coming into power. One of the problems we have increasingly in Europe at the moment is countries are probably thinking in a more kind of selfish way about the future, thinking about themselves rather than the EU in an aggregate, and that could be amplified depending on the outcome of those elections. So you could have growing anti-EU sentiment in a lot of the bigger countries in Europe, who are at the moment anyway at least committed to to being part of the European Union. So it's an issue of concern. There's nothing we can do about it. We can, we'll sit there and watch, basically. There's nothing that farmers can do. There's nothing that Irish people as a nation can do about it either. This is something that's completely outside our control.
Yeah, but ultimately we're exposed. The Irish agricultural industry is exposed.
Yeah, I mean, Irish agriculture, looking across the sectors, particularly the dry stock sector, is quite dependent on the level of agricultural support provided by the Common Agricultural Policy. If member states start having a more negative view about the European Union, then you're running the risk of them having a more negative view about paying into the overall EU budget, which in turn could have negative consequences for the amount of money that's available for the CAP. So a concern there would be that when the next CAP deal gets done, that there might be less money available to fund the CAP, and less money then coming to Ireland, which wouldn't be a good outcome, especially for the beef sector, which is quite dependent, and tillage as well. Yeah, I mean, those two sectors, the share of the overall farm income that comes from agricultural supports is very high, especially when you compare, say, with the dairy sector.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
As we just heard, dairy prices are set to improve next year, but concerns remain about how dairy markets were managed this year in a period of great instability. News correspondent Pat O'Toole raised these questions with the President of the ICMSA, John Comer, at the organisation's AGM this week.
Yeah, big day for the organisation, as you have referenced. This is what drives policy. We should have up to 250 delegates here today, and they influence the people at the top table, and it's leaning on their toe when there's a problem, and they're best placed to express the pain, and then we have to try and come up with solutions in order to not repeat the mistakes of the past. The crisis that hasn't quite finished yet, we have just reached 28 cents a litre as I currently speak with you. That's break even. But we have changed the graph, and now it's on an upward trajectory for milk price. That's to be very welcomed. I think it happened more by good luck than good management. I think we have a wholly inadequate suite of measures at both national level and at European level to mitigate and offset the ruinous volatility that has become more pronounced with each decade that passed for various reasons. Globalisation, quotas gone, not that quotas were fit for purpose in the first instance. We always said they were a lazy tool. But the reality is, no matter what way you examine the supply chain that farmers have to feed into, you cannot have a solely market-orientated policy with a product that has a 3-year lead-in when you take the 9 months gestation and 2.5 years waiting for the animal either to go to the abattoir or come into the milking parlour. That's a 3-year lead-in. Nobody can tell you where the markets are going to be in 3 years' time. So farmers would find it impossible to plan, organise and structure their business in a completely market-orientated way. It's an impossibility. And I think one bit of good that might have come out of the crisis that we're just out of is, I think there's a recognition at long last, on behalf of the Commission and on behalf of the Irish Minister for Agriculture, that is actual a statement of fact.
If you had a magic wand and you could introduce one measure for the next cycle, what would it be? Or is there any one measure, or does it have to be, as you call it, a suite of measures which combine to give farmers some protection and insulation?
Yeah, I think it has to be a suite of measures, and these measures need to be available automatically. We don't have to have crisis meetings, and by the time the measures are made available to the primary producer, the markets are starting to recover anyway. But remember, with the volatility that's out there, markets will always recover. There's no question about that, because if you do nothing, a swathe of farmers across the European Union, and in this case maybe across the globe, will go broke, the supply will contract and the price will go back up again. But we think in ICMSA that there's a better way of doing business, there's a better way of structuring it, there's a better way of putting policies on it that will help the most vulnerable. And the most vulnerable players in the supply chain, as I'm ad nauseum trying to explain, is the primary producer and the consumer. They're the most people that can be exploited. Everyone else in between will get a margin. You can be guaranteed of that. And that's not blaming them. Everybody's entitled to a margin. But like the consumer will either have to pay more at the end of the day, or else the farmer will have to look back and there's nobody to pass it back to. So what I would like going forward, and I hope to address it here today with the Minister, is to have intervention and having intervention fulfilling the original concept, which was that when you fell below the cost of production, intervention would kick in. And it did fulfil that during the last crisis, because it's roughly about 20.4 cents a litre is the equivalent, but the costs have gone up to 28, and intervention price needs to be there. It needs to be available in significant volumes if there is a crisis in the future. Hopefully there won't be for a long time, and that'll be available at 28 cents a litre or whatever the costs are at the time, with enough volumes to stabilise the market. That, coupled with the voluntary reduction scheme, I think those two measures alone, if they were automatically there, available to farmers, that it would be a huge step forward, because with that voluntary reduction scheme that was introduced as an emergency measure, it's the first time that I, as a farmer, had a choice. I could either produce my milk and take the market value for it, or I could have got compensation and not to produce it and help the markets recover. But I had a free choice. If I wanted to expand, I could have expanded as well.
You mentioned the expansion of costs. In what was less than a decade, costs went up by 25%. Are those costs sustainable, or do they have to be addressed and attacked at this point?
Costs have got to be always worked on. I mean, there's the three stakeholders here, of course. The farmer has a responsibility, he or she, to make themselves as efficient as possible, to adopt the technologies that are out there, implement best practice, and make sure that they're efficient. After they've done that, they can do no more. Everything else is outside of their control. National government has a duty to, let's say, take it for insurance. Insurance has gone through the roof. It's a significant cost on farms that has fed in to a lowered net margin. You've got the cost of credit. We're out of line with the rest of Europe, with our competitors. Our credit is too expensive. I think Irish farmers are paying roughly 80 million euros per year, more than the average interest rate across Europe. I think that's a ridiculous situation. And the irony isn't lost on us that we actually own the banks. And, you know, there is a requirement on government to create an operational environment that has a lower cost structure. And then, of course, the third part of that is European Commission needs to be able to have strategic influences over markets in order to stop the serious dips that will take out swathes of family farms.
John, I suppose the hot news issue at the moment is in relation to revenue, looking for farmers to pay income tax on preference shares that they purchased and are holding, in many cases, in their co-op. What's your take on this? And we're aware of where things are now. The Kerry Co-op met on Friday, but as ICMSA, very closely linked to all dairy co-ops, but Kerry in particular, what's your take on it, and what do you want to see happen next?
This was a vote from the blue to Kerry suppliers, to a lot of Kerry suppliers. Over 400 in the initial tranche has been written out in. Our office had been inundated with phone calls from concerned suppliers. On the face of it, one would look at it and say that it doesn't appear to be consistent with custom and practice that had existed heretofore. But having said that, I'm very conscious that ICMSA is working in the background to achieve some clarity from revenue, to try and exact something from this situation that represents fairness. And I certainly want to be very careful with my words that I don't back anybody into a corner at this particular juncture. Revenue feels that there's an issue. Our members feel that they were tax compliant and that this is unfair. And we're trying to negotiate some balanced resolution to this that will represent fairness. So you will understand then, Pat, that I'm limited in what I can actually say. But you would know.
Would you support the Kerry Co-op's concept that Revenue agreed to take a test case and that all Revenue's actions be put on hold and frozen effectively, so the clock stops ticking on farmers until this is resolved by a test case?
Oh, absolutely. That should be taken as a given, because we were advocating that as well. I think it's the pragmatic approach. I think it will give everybody a bit of breathing space to stand back and have a look at this and to try and resolve it amicably.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Michael Murphy is a dairy calf to beef farmer who lives just outside Neenah in County Tipperary. He spoke about the issues facing this particular breeding system with our livestock editor Adam Woods at an IFA beef meeting this week.
Well, I buy roughly 280 calves every spring, 150 Frisian bull calves and 120 Hereford and Angus heifers.
And finish them at what age and what weight?
The heifers are finished at 18 months of age at roughly 270 kilos dead weight, and the Frisians are slaughtered at 22 months of age at 320 kilos dead weight.
I suppose we heard at tonight's meeting about increased numbers coming down the line in terms of from the dairy herd. What are your main issues, I suppose, in relation to your farming system going forward? What do you see as the main issues affecting you?
I have two big problems going forward with the expansion of the dairy herd. There's a growing number of crossbred calves coming on the market, unidentified as being from Jersey crosses or whatever. These animals are financial disasters if you end up with them. And I would like to see a cull made on those dairy-bred calves from crossbred cows.
I suppose we spoke tonight about issues around maybe consumers looking on that, maybe in relation to maybe animal welfare and that. Do you think there might be issues around that in terms of consumer perceptions of farming systems if we operated that cull scheme?
I don't think so, because we're going to have problems in moving our animals, and the whole market is going to be flooded. So let's give the suckling man a chance here and get rid of the rubbish from the system, and they might have a brighter future in suckling.
Okay. You also outlined, and you got great support from the floor here tonight, about a system where you'd like to see introduced that sees the breed of the dam on the blue card. Just tell us a bit about what you'd like to see.
Yeah, I mean, the blue card system, you're given the tag number of the dam on your ID card. That's no good to me when I'm purchasing a calf, or it's no good to any man that's purchasing an animal in an art or privately. But the dam's tag number on the ICMSA, the breed of that dam is not well known, and ICBF have it as well. And I can't see why there shouldn't be another little box on the TB card outlining what the dam is, whether it's a Frisian, British Frisian, Jersey cross, Jersey. It would be a huge advantage going forward.
And you'd see that as maybe taken care of in terms of market dictating the price for calves then?
Yes, there is madness in the calf trade as we stand, because that's fine if you don't mind paying good money for a calf if it turns out to be what you think it is. But as it is, it's a kind of a lucky bag system.
Michael Murphy, thanks very much, and best of luck with your farming in the future.
The Irish Farmers Journal weekly podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Weather conditions in 2016 have had an effect on the yield and quality of the Northern Ireland potato harvest. News correspondent Peter McCann spoke to the founder of Wilson's Country, one of the premier potato packers and processors in Ireland, to find out more.
Our business is probably three parts to it. Number one, we pre-pack potatoes for the supermarkets. And we pre-pack sort of 300 to 400 tonnes of potatoes a week. Our second part of our business is in terms of food service, and we peel potatoes, chips and all prepared products, and again it's sort of 300 tonnes a week. And thirdly, and a smaller part of the business but growing, is the convenience side, where we're starting to cook some products to create convenience again for the retail sector, so that people, instead of maybe taking 3/4 of an hour for wages to have on their table, they're ready in 10-15 minutes.
As far as suppliers go, farmer growers, how many have you got, Angus, supplying you?
To supply all our potato requirement, we have about 20 to 23 growers, both north and south, and we like the idea of having a range of growers from different areas, because as we know in Ireland there can be some significantly different weather patterns, and usually if the rain's falling on the west it's not in the east, or vice versa, but we like to have that spread. In terms of the growing season, we had a very cold April, so crops were probably slow to get in, and not a particularly good summer with a lack of sunshine. So at best the crops would be average, probably a wee bit less than average, but we're very, very grateful for a good harvest. So all the crop that was in the ground is now out of the ground, or nearly all out of the ground. There's just maybe 1 or 2% just to get wiped out hopefully this week. So the crop's out of the ground. The quality would be, again, just about average. There's greens, there's some internal issues, there's black spot, there's a few issues there that are probably making the yield of the crop not as good as maybe other years, but still okay. Across, looking further afield and into Europe, there was issues in various countries in terms of floods and so on. So again, the market looks to be in balance, but we'll know better sort of after Christmas and maybe after Easter whether there is enough to supply the European market.
Finally, Angus, just as far as the actual potato sector goes in Northern Ireland, last year was the record low acreage. Now, in fairness, it's increased by about 4% in 2016. Is it in the back of margins?
There's been a reasonable return in the potato market for growers this past couple of years. Certainly nothing particularly good, but when you compare it maybe to cereals, and there's always the chance that the potato market will throw up a very expensive year, which is a great return to the farm. So a lot of growers like to, in their rotation, to keep a few acres of potatoes in the mix and hope that they get a really good year.
Angus, thanks so much for your time.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
One of the reasons for Donald Trump's historic victory in the US presidential election this month was the support that he enjoyed among US farmers. Our beef specialist Kieran Lenihan was in America last week, and he spoke to farmers in some of the states where support for Trump seems almost unanimous.
Bill Hawley from Trail City, a rancher. Who did you vote for in the election and why?
Donald Trump. And why? Well, pretty much everything on the spectrum. One, being from Ireland, I'm Catholic. From moral issues on down, I voted for Trump. And then on defense, our current administration, and I believe the previous one, hi Jim, would have been really quite lax on defense. And then the economy. From taxes, we have the highest corporate tax of all the industrialized nations, about 35%.
You're going to take all the companies out of Ireland back to America.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He wants to take it back to 15% and bring jobs back. And so I think we can play fair and get some jobs back in our economy. We'll pretty much give it away. You know, Trump said in the campaign that China has a 7% GDP, and they think that's bad. And we got a 1%, and we think that's good. That's, you do the math there. There's quite a disparity there when it comes to trade, and we need to balance that out.
Casey Dowd, rancher from Midland. Give us your opinion on the election, Casey.
Very happy with the turnout. I think most everybody in agriculture is and should be. Trump, I believe, is more for the farmer rancher, and I'm thinking it's going to work out for the best.
What do you think Trump is going to do for you, Casey?
He's going to bring the beef price back up, it looks like, and maybe work on closing some of the borders, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Coffee Enright, tell the people of Ireland who you voted for and why.
I voted for Donald Trump, and the reason I voted for him is I just couldn't believe Hillary anymore.
Okay. Coffee, every single beef farmer I've asked has said that they voted for Donald Trump. Do you think any beef farmer would have voted for Hillary?
I would say very, very few did, if any at all.
We're in McLaughlin at a bred heifer sale, and I'm here with local farmer Kevin Moser. Kevin, the elections generated huge interest across the water with us. What's your opinion on the whole thing?
It came out, I think, like I thought it would. The right person's in there, so.
That seems to be what I'm getting from farmers, that she was, or that Hillary would put shackles on farmers.
Yes, so that's why I voted the way I did.
Lyle Hawley, a local rancher. Lyle, give us your opinions on the recent presidential race.
Turned out the way I wanted it to.
Okay.
You know, the candidates were probably not, neither one were perfect, but out of the two, the one that I voted for.
Okay.
I hope there are some changes made. Some of the changes he talked about making, I hope he comes through.
Are there shackles on agriculture at present?
Cattle prices are down. Yeah. Price of corn is down. Yeah, it's tough right now.
Environmental legislation doesn't help?
Depends. Sometimes it depends on I think if the ranchers and the environmental people work together, I think they can figure something out to make it work to everyone's benefit.
Sure, we're here at a breeder sale in McLaughlin. Give us your 2 cents on the election, Ted.
I'm thankful for Trump, and the economy is going to start getting better. We're going to start getting more jobs. Our schools are going to start teaching the kids the right way, and our infrastructure will start being built instead of saying it's going to be done and not doing it. Thank God for Trump.
Your take, Steve, on the election. It's generating big interest with us. People just can't believe that someone like Trump got in. But what I gather talking to people at the Mart yesterday in Valentine and around Ainsworth, they just wanted a change. That the institution.
Well, I can't stand the guy. I can't stand watching him on TV, but I voted for him. And what happened was the Democrats and Obama, they're just trying to overregulate us to death. It's gotten crazy. They're in the global warming and in the Green Deal, and they just went way too overboard. And so I don't think he's the right guy, but his party is actually the guy that's vice president, going to be vice president. I think is who they should have got.
That's okay.
Pence is better than him. But I think he's going to make it happen. And I think some of it's the way he comes across. He's taken a representative from a U.S. representative from North Dakota to advise him on the oil industry.
Okay.
And because he knows what's going on. I mean, these green people, they think fracking's terrible, and the scientifically have never proven that it's hurt anything.
What do you hope Trump does for you?
Environmental Protection Agency is way out of hands on this water of the United States law, and I think that's going to go away. It's terrible what's happening on federal lands. They're running all the cattle off the grazing, and now they're having forest fires all over everything, and it's because of all the underbrush, and they're using the endangered species law to do it. They need to revamp that whole thing. I think he'll get that done and straighten EPA out.
In terms of, give us an example of what the EPA is doing to you at the moment, or what shackles they have on you?
Well, they want to regulate so that if we get a rainstorm, we got a little puddle of water out here, even though it's going to soak in the ground and never go anywhere, it might affect that lake down there.
Yes,
and we got to have a permit to do anything we're doing our land, or they might tell us you can't farm it, or all kinds of stuff. It's gotten really out of hand.
So that lake is what, 3 or 4 miles away? You can see it out your kitchen window here. In your opinion, if you took the agricultural section of society, did most of them vote for Trump?
I would say 90%.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. That's interesting.
That's where Hillary got beat. They did not expect the rural people who carried the vote because we're such a minority.
Yes, yeah.
But I think the states like North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, 90% of the people voted and really got out, and it was crazy.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Finally, with Christmas only around the corner, it's time to start thinking about gift ideas. Irish Country Living consumer editor Ciara Leahy shares some recommendations with Irish Farmers Journal news correspondent Thomas Hubert.
I'm here with Irish Country Living's consumer editor Ciara Leahy, and we're really a few weeks away now, Ciara, and Christmas shopping is upon us. What do you have in this week's Country Living as for recommendations for Christmas gifts? Starting with me, for men.
Starting with you, Thomas, exactly for you. Well, actually, you know what, this gift might actually really work for you. It's the Chromecast from Google, and I have to say I got this last year. It's absolutely fantastic. Basically what it does is, say you've got Netflix and you don't have a smart TV, you can just play Netflix on your phone. It goes straight to your TV and you get to watch everything on your TV. So it's actually a great present for a guy who loves gadgets, but it's great for the family as well. And this year they have the Chromecast Ultra, which is actually really good to plug into your Ethernet if you've got bad Wi-Fi. So I know that affects a lot of rural listeners, and that is coming in at €79, but well worth it. We use it all the time.
Okay, that's you sorted.
That's you sorted. Okay. Another one ideal for the busy farmer is HerdWatch farming app. Now this one is brilliant for the person who hates paperwork, because basically HerdWatch helps you deal with all your farm paperwork. It comes in at €99, and there's actually a gift subscription that gives you a month free. So I'm sure lots of dads or brothers would really appreciate that one. Irish whiskey is really, coming into its own, especially in the last few years. And one company that is really doing it well is Walsh Whiskey Distillery. And we have this gift box in it that is absolutely gorgeous. It's like a mini book gift pack, and it's got 3 miniatures of their critically acclaimed Writer's Tier Copper Pot whiskey. Really good. But, if you want to kind of get something small for the whiskey lover, that's coming in at $19.99. They also do, now I don't have it in the gift card, but they also do personalised whiskey bottles, so that's a really cool thing. And I also have beautiful Waterford Crystal tumblers as well. They're really stunning. They're coming in a bit more expensive at $240 for a 4-pack, but that's if you really want to impress the whiskey drinker.
Okay, there's plenty for me and my brother there, Ciara. What about yourself, and maybe an idea for my wife?
Right, for the ladies in your life. Okay, this one I absolutely love. We actually did a feature on a lady called Audrey Vance earlier this year. She's got a company called Wedding Dress Inc., and she does the most beautiful designer illustrations of wedding dresses. Now, you're probably a bit too close to Christmas to actually get it designed up, but you could get a gift voucher for somebody so that they can actually go away and get this beautiful personalised illustration of their wedding. Perfect for, you know what, it's great for, say, a lady that got married in the last year or two, but actually she told me that she's had women that got married 40 years ago and they've got it for anniversary gifts, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, because you're not really going to wear the dress again.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a different way.
You get to see it every day. It's fabulous. We have a gorgeous coats in from Port West. They're really fashionable. They're really warm. They're perfect for anybody that does a lot of outdoor work or anyone that's into horses. They look really, really good. Perfect if you're going to the ploughing or any of the shows as well this year. And also, McGee 1866 celebrated 50 years this year. They have the most beautiful fashion and clothes, and we feature some of their centenary wear in our gift guide as well. We have a beautiful pink pashmina. It's coming in at €179, but really they are great to look at as well for the lady in your life. Also, what we have in for the ladies and the men's is we have the suggestion of gift vouchers for either the Curragh or Galway races. So for the people that are really into equestrian and that love the races, that is a great gift to give someone.
Right, so that's all well and good, the adults, but really Christmas, it's all about the children. So what do you have for them?
The children, and we have loads of gifts for the farm mad, the little farmers. One of the things that I'm guilty of putting in every year is the Rolly New Holland tractors and the trailers. I mean, kids love them, and also this year we're actually giving away a competition, giving them away for free as part of our gift guide. So that's definitely worth checking out. Also, found the cutest toys in Aldi for little ones. They have this really, really beautiful little rocking horse. It's quite contemporary looking, but it's coming in at $44.99, and rocking horses can be really expensive, so that's a really one to look at. And Aldi also have this cute little shop stall. So basically, for any of the little ones wanting to follow in their parents' footsteps in the food industry, Aldi have this shop stall to play shop, which comes in at $54.99. Another book set that we absolutely love, it's called The Tales from Riverside Farm, and it really targets the 4+ age group, and these are like quirky and unique books that have entertaining and engaging stories to pass on a farm safety message in a positive way. I mean, they start from $6.99. Great for any little farmers that are, on the yard or whatever. Like, it's a really great way of conveying the farm safety message in a very fun way. And I suppose one of the other things I absolutely love is the more sentimental gifts are always appreciated as well, and probably will be there long after the little toys that they've finished playing. One One shop is called Tales for Tadpoles, and they have beautiful children books and illustrations, and they have really adorable nostalgic illustrations. So we actually feature one of the Winnie the Pooh prints. It comes in at $16.50, but it's a lovely little piece to have in a small person's bedroom. And the very last thing, Thomas, is look, Christmas is all about giving as well, and would really say to people that look at what your money is actually going towards. For example, IKEA have this Let's Play for Change campaign that goes on for the Christmas. So for every IKEA toy sold coming up to Christmas, they're going to donate €1 to a bunch of charities that they're involved in that are based across Asia, Africa and the Middle East. So, it's great that, you're getting toys for your kids, and they're really, really cute toys, but also some of the proceeds are going to children's charities.
Okay, Ciara, thanks for playing Santa this week. There's these and a lot more suggestions for Christmas gifts in this week's Irish Country Living.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.